Victoria Neighbourhood Association.
May as well.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I wasn't planning to go through the submission. It is as presented in writing. What I was asked to do by the group is just to give a little bit of background to it, which didn't work on the form. So, excuse me, they wanted me to just tell you what we did leading up to the submission that we put in. Several representatives of our association attended the first workshops way back when the consultation was first beginning. Several more attended the recent ones that were after the consultation where some of the results were presented. We had two council staff members come to one of the Victoria Neighbourhood Committee meetings probably about a week to 10 days before the submission deadline to just go back over the process, look at some of the implications, answer some of the questions. And we then set up a group that did the draft submission. We did manage in the end to consult with all of our members. It's 106 financial members at the moment, plus some of the active residents who for various reasons aren't members but are still involved. So I suppose it was probably about 120 or 130 people. None of them disagreed with the draft, which is more or less what's here. We just tidied up a few things and put in the first choice, which was to keep Central on its own, to have its own board, but we sort of knew that at this point in time you would probably find that premature. But it was looking ahead to the future if and when the central city does become as large and diverse as people are planning. Several of the people that then got back to us said that they were putting in a submission in their own right as individuals as well. A few had already done it and then saw ours, and some people had already done their draft and made a few changes, but basically had put in their own with alternative ideas. And 6 of those people, so I've actually written out typed up their names in case you need it so we can have that, but they wanted me to tell you that they do support the V&A one as well, even though as residents in the area they put in something that was slightly different. The association's approach was to make as few changes as possible because having been involved in that consultation from the beginning, we knew how much time and energy had already been put into what it was that you came up with. And so even though some of the ideas for the configurations of community boards were different from what we put into the final submission, as you know, one change here makes 10 changes there. And some of them we said, oh my goodness, we've changed every single configuration. And those people must have given you, or given their boards or whoever they consulted with, ideas of who they wanted to be paired with. So we really didn't want to redraw the whole map for you. I was also asked to acknowledge our current 2 councillors and the Hagley Ferrymead board, because we think as in this map we are very much the central area, because we're sort of right smack in the middle of what would be the central ward, and we think that we've been very well served by our 2 fellows here and by the board. I guess the only thing, having listened to the previous speakers, is that our focus was on the configuration of the boards. For the location where we are, which If you don't know the Victoria Neighbourhood Association, I probably put it in here, but it's bounded by Victoria Street, Beeley Avenue, Salisbury Street and Colombo Street. We have very close relations with all of the inner city, the current inner city residential areas. In fact, there is a inner city residential area group, and we do meet or communicate quite often, but we didn't really, I don't even think we discussed the actual boundaries of the central ward, because we knew from everything we'd gone to that you had to put them together so that they had equivalent population. So we assumed that this was how that worked out the best. And because of our location, the boundaries that the other people have talked about wouldn't be an issue to us personally. So the other issues of the number of councillors and central as a ward, as a specified ward, we did agree with. It really was the combination of wards into boards that we talked about ad nauseum. So, unless you want me to go over and remind people what's on here, I'm happy to clarify or answer questions if there are any.
Well, let's go to questions and see how we go.
Okay.
But I think that, I mean, your submission's pretty clear around the community board issue. So, Pauline, Phil, and Jimmy.
Yes. Thank you, Marjorie. Unless I missed it, I know that you're not comfortable with the groupings of the community boards that would come into your ward. So which ones would you be comfortable with?
I'm
sorry if you covered it, I don't...
No, that's all right. There were three alternatives. The first one is the one that I just mentioned, that was put in because of the consultation that we undertook, was, and because of the unique issues facing Central and other reasons that I put down here, is to have a one ward board and to have that be Central. So that was one. And then the second choice, and again trying to make the fewest changes or implications for other groupings, was Central with Woolston and Linwood. The third alternative, and they really are almost equal as far as we're concerned, but we wanted to put them forward because of those other implications, would be Central with Woolston only. So what I said at the bottom of this, of my version, is Woolston is our preferred partner. But we're happy to have Linwood with us. What we do not think makes any sense whatsoever is the Central Papanui Marshlands configuration. We can't get our heads around that, and we didn't hear any of that being put forward by any of the other groups that were in the consultation workshops that we were in.
So do you also see Beeley Ave as being a boundary of sorts?
Well, it's our actual boundary, so for us it is, but...
no, by boundary I mean a demarcator, something that separates you from the St Albans side, perhaps?
Yes, yeah.
A psychological one?
Beeley Avenue, in sort of almost every way you can think of, is a natural ending. I mean, it's the four avenues configuration. It's the end of what people think of as the central city. It's our boundary. I mean, to us, it's the boundary. We have
the end of the Northern Arterial. Whoops.
We have very little to do with, well, we have nothing to do with, simply because there's been no issue that has brought us together, except for residents and in some cases businesses that are on the fringe of Beeley Avenue, Victoria Street, and around in that area. But yes, to us it's a natural boundary, but we weren't so worried about where the boundary of the ward itself is, because...
but that must be why you're not comfortable with working with the Papanui Community Board or the Martians one, because you don't feel that...
Oh yes, we can't think of anything that's in common.
Great, thank you.
But there would be with St Albans and Papanui. So, I mean, at some point there is a link. I totally get Marshlands. I think Marshlands is, I think you're right about that, but...
At some point, I think there's a link. When you're in the central city, there's a link with everything, in a way, because, you know, even the way it looks here, I mean, everything points to the central city, and we did hear that in the consultation, is that everybody wants a piece of the action of the central city, and they all have an opinion about the central city. And of course they do, and of course they should. As do every councillor have an interest and implications for the central city. There's a difference when what you're looking at, excuse me, are those issues from a residential and a residence standpoint, and who you have like things with. And we just think the older and redeveloped, being redeveloped areas of Walston and Linwood, and even when we see the kinds of things that they raise, when we look at issues and listening to other people, is just much more in common than St Albans or Papanui or...
And so I think it comes back to what Ellie pointed out before, but how much do you think this is your historical ties versus perhaps we're in a changing world?
I'd be really stretched to think what the changing world, how the changing world would bring Marshlands and Central. Marshlands has so many issues of its own.
Marshlands, I think we all agree with.
So what about
do you?
It's a reach, you know, and its connection is with Papanui.
Okay. Well, somebody must have thought so, it wouldn't have been in there, so I didn't know.
But
okay, Marshlands we're taking out of the picture.
Let's take it out of the picture and let's talk about Papanui,
and
Linwood and Walston, because I think they're the real issues, and maybe we could get some advice from staff about whether it is possible to have a smaller community board that just focuses on the centre. That the one thing that I'm very mindful of is that if we achieved our ambition, which is to have 20,000 people living inside the 4 avenues, then you would be the size of a ward in your own right. And I wonder whether we are ahead of ourselves because we're pushing boundaries that are, creating boundaries, not pushing boundaries, but creating boundaries because we're working on a, sort of equality of mix. But does the same rules apply to the establishment of a community board? And I guess that's the advice that we could ask for.
And we'll come back with full advice, but you could just have a community board for the Central City ward. Have a single community board for that ward.
Right. So that could be an additional community board.
Okay. Yeah, and it would be.
And that might solve a problem, but it also might establish the framework for the future. So forward looking.
Okay. Well, this is where sometimes associations can become wimps, because that was by far the preferred one. And in fact, because lots of our consultation, given all sorts of reasons, is by email and electronic meetings even, and that one got more people. That's how we got the 130 mothers, yes, and giving all sorts of reasons. But we ended up saying, the royal we, ended up saying they'll never go for that. So we need to also give alternatives. But I do want to say there was also enthusiasm for the Walston when we were thinking if we were combined with people. I think it's just our area anyway sees those as more natural. I know we have multi-million-dollar townhouses and everything else going up in our neighbourhood, but we still see ourselves as also having the kinds of issues that are in the older neighbourhoods and with more social housing and so on. But if you have any inkling toward a board, I also think that would resolve the problem that several people raised, even though we were supporting the 16 the increase in the number of councillors and realised that that would mean 1 per ward, we really felt sorry for the person who was elected to Central, because there would just be so many things that that person would be involved in, and so many people outside of the ward also wanting a piece of that person. So for all those reasons, could we just pretend that we've said here that it's a really strong first choice?
Right.
Instead of just a first choice.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. So, other question, Phil and
You've nailed
Jimmy.
the wards
Jimmy's after.
and your preferences, and that's been really helpful. And it's helpful that it ties in with the previous submitters too.
It does
Marjorie,
help, yes.
very much.
Yes.
So, if we can't do that,
Yep.
as a fallback position, would you also support, say, increasing the number of elected representatives on the community boards? Would that be?
Yeah, I hadn't, we just hadn't thought of that. What we talked about more, which I put in here and was also going to emphasise, which relates in a way, is all of the talking that you've done. I don't think it was in here, but we know that you're planning to or thinking about greater devolving more responsibility to the boards, which we certainly agree with. So if you put those two things together, you probably would need a stronger or a bigger board. But there still are things that only councillors can do. And
in terms of the delegations.
And,
yes.
well,
Yes,
and just because of the nature of the beast. I'm just not sure, and it would just be a personal opinion because we didn't think of that and didn't talk about it.
And as I said before, the suggestion wouldn't be to reduce the number of councillors.
No, but I'm just not sure if on its own, making the board bigger, if we were still either with partners that we didn't think we had much in common with, if you were doing that and had a separate community, a separate board for the central city, it obviously wouldn't need to be the biggest by any means, would it?
I mean,
I think I'm dithering. I don't know,
Leanne. The St Albans side of it, you know, that's included in the central boundary, and
yes.
as you say, that it's neither here nor there to you, the boundary.
It wasn't in any of the consultation.
They were looking in. You know, the message that came through from that area was that they associated themselves with living as part of the central city.
Oh, okay.
So they looked in, they didn't look out, so they didn't see themselves as connected to Papanui as strongly as they saw themselves connected to the central city.
I see. Yep.
And given that it's my ambition to live within walking distance of Hagley Park, I can understand.
We've got some really good townhouses being built right next to us, taking away all of our sun, but we'd love to have you there.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps you could do a deal with the developer because they're all too expensive.
It's actually not. We thought it was going to. It's actually working out fine, so
great.
Take away that part.
Jimmy.
No time.
I'm letting you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, I think no time. Just one question. Because your first choice, you know, if create the specific board to meet the central cities, the what's the needs. I'm concerned. One councillor, am I right? Mention one councillor, but how many board members? 2. How many community board members? There is central board based on you. If based on the demographic, you know, the population, maybe 2. So three elected members organize the meeting. Do you think that's okay? Or, yeah.
It doesn't matter. I mean, the point that they're asking for is for a separate ward on its own right. But I mean, we could say 6 or 5 or whatever.
Yes, I think the workload and how many we'd have to lead, or we would have to talk about more.
Okay.
Our concern was one councillor for
central city.
that area that includes the central city as well as the other. That our concern was for that person. But if there was the dedicated board, I think it would even help that person. I'll tell you what one of the ideas was that you'll probably really like. Yes. One person wanted to double the number of councillors and half your pay.
I'll support that.
so that it came out equal.
That's what it used to be.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very
Anything
much, Marjorie. That was very enlightening. And,
Do you need to know which? I mean, I printed it in case
no,
I didn't know
it's
how
okay.
formal
I mean,
this was.
that's fine. We'll appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.